नेहा भिक्रमनाशोस्ति प्रत्यवायो न विद्यते स्वल्पमप्यस्य धर्मस्य त्रायते महतो भयात्. This we have learned from Bhagavad Gita over the last whole month, that on this spiritual path, no effort is ever lost, either in this world or beyond. Even a little understanding of these great truths of our Sanatana Dharma can redeem us of the greatest of fears. This is the message of Bhagavad Gita and a great assurance for all those who are walking this path. Because Arjuna asks Krishna, it's fine, you mentioned that you must control the mind and senses and be a yogi and do your duty in this world without being attached to the action or the results. Many people take to this path, but not everybody can reach the goal. Some may fall off the way or may not achieve what they've set out to achieve. What is the destiny of those people? Then Sri Krishna shows, don't worry. Even for them, there is no end. Nahi kalyanakrit kaschit durgatim tata gacchati, he says. For those who have done some good on this path, some effort on this path, for such people, no ruin comes. Durgati does not come to such people as long as they have tried sincerely to walk on this path. Even if they have not achieved, it's okay. As long as they have tried, they will still have a better end than most of the others who do not even try. So Bhagavan keeps on assuring us again and again on this path that keep walking, do not give up. Because whatever little we achieve on this path is going to help us in some way or the other, and nothing will be lost. Because each of these efforts will accrue. May not be in this life, maybe in the next life, maybe even, as they say, beyond our lifetimes. Also, this effort will stay to help us. So this is the message of Bhagavad Gita, and this is the message to all the students, staff, and devotees that keep walking on this path. I always say, if you cannot fly, you have to run. If you cannot run, you have to walk. If you cannot walk, you have to crawl. But do not stop. Whatever it takes, keep moving on this path. That is the message of all our scriptures. Attishtata, Jagrata, Prapya Varani Bodhata. Do not give up unless you have achieved what you have set out to achieve. And that is the message of all our gurus, all our great leaders, all our Mahatmas, and our scriptures. I came late, so all this justification is for that. I was talking to somebody who was very keen on propagating and promoting Indian culture, spirituality, through the heritage of our temples. Indian temples were the nerve center for all activities, whether social, economical, or even spiritual. Everything was somehow connected to the temples in our country. And as long as these temples maintained their sanctity and, in a way, some kind of authority and autonomy, they were able to keep all the people of the society connected to them. I'm not talking about it in terms of what happened in the last few centuries, but the original idea of how these temples were functioning in India, maybe a millennia ago, or two or so. The idea was that these temples used to do three major services to the people, apart from the rituals that were performed to the deity and all the spiritual guidance and solace that the people received. These temples were also helping people in the social side. They were annakshetras, where food was given as prasadam to anybody and everybody. So nobody was denied a meal, whoever you might be. If you came to a temple, you are assured of something to eat. That meant nobody slept hungry in our country, because there was some temple somewhere which was ready to provide food. At least one meal a day you could easily have had in any of these temples. So nobody slept hungry in our country. That was the beauty of this temple system. Such huge social protection. Today, I have heard that 700 to 800 million people go hungry to bed across the world. Even in India, almost half of them probably tonight will not find their dinner. But for everybody and anybody, especially the Vatus, the Brahmacharis, those school-going ones, temples were always available to provide them a morning meal. Those who have read the book Loving God by Kasturi, they would know that he mentions that when he was orphaned very early, he did not have the means to even find breakfast. That time it was the temple on the way which would provide them with some food to eat while they went to school. So this is always our tradition, to give food. Anna Danam. Anna was not commodity, not to be commercialized, not to be sold and bought. Anybody who was hungry was provided food. But with the modernization of our systems, food becoming a major business across the world, especially not even good food, bad food becoming a major business. All the processed food, junk food, as they call it. And people buy it and eat it because people have also become quite lazy. It's not that they're poor, they cannot afford, they just don't want to cook. If they cook the food every day fresh and eat, it will only maintain their health as long as that is sattvic food and cooked properly. We read in Bhagavad Gita, three kinds of food is there, tamasic, rajasic and sattvic. And tamasic food is that which has been cooked at least 3 hours before you consume. Imagine all the junk food and all that which comes in packets, tins and cans. Definitely that has been cooked not just 3 hours before, maybe 3 months before, maybe even 3 years before, we do not know. That is the idea of this. So this is tamasic food. So I had a discussion about how health of the people has been deteriorating, and more lifestyle diseases are spreading in the country like ours, which was otherwise a very healthy country for a long time. We never heard of such diseases. But today, diabetes, blood pressure, cardiovascular issues, so many other small and big, very young people is spread all around these villages. So many of them come to our hospitals. And largely because they are all consuming food in the wrong way. So again, Bhagavad Gita guides us by telling, eat right and eat what is right. If we go by our Indian system, we were supposed to cook every day fresh, and we were supposed to eat during the sun time when the sun was out. That had an influence on our Jataragni. Therefore, digestion was easy. Especially as you grow older, your digestive fire gets weaker, because your body does not need so much food as when you were young, when you were growing, when your cells were multiplying, bones were growing, muscles were growing. You need more energy. So that time it was permitted, but not anymore. But however, a lot of commercialization and selling of this junk food, in the name of quick bite, snacking, and so to say, easy foods, that has led to a lot of health issues. Unfortunately, the whole country is, and many countries have taken to this path. But is this ethical business is the question. Our Indian traditions would not permit these things if you strictly go by the scripture. Like Bhagavad Gita itself, don't eat anything which has already passed a period of 1 yama, which is 3 hours. Because after that, the bacterial growth, everything, of course you can refrigerate it, preserve it, do all kinds of things, but then it does not remain a sattvic food. That's what they say. Then there were discussions about how temples were also running gurukulas. Most of the temples had an acharya, and they had students whom they used to teach. To a certain extent, and till a certain age, all children of the village were given basic education, girls included. After a certain age, according to their family's traditions and skills, people used to take to their paths. But basic education was guaranteed for all. In fact, in the book of Dharmapal, the beautiful tree, it is clearly mentioned that in those times, in 1800s, not very far in time, there were more primary schools. In every village, there was a primary school, in South India at least. And this was survey done across Madras Presidency, so also around Mysore and a bit of Bombay. And they came to this conclusion that India has a very good network of primary school education, which does not exist even in Europe did not exist in Europe at that point in time. A very structured and methodical approach. The language was taught, arithmetic, that is mathematics, grammar was taught, and the basics of nature and physics was taught. So children were very aware, and only after a certain age they would specialize in their family traditions mostly, or whatever they want to pursue. But it was replaced with another system where children were to be trained to become clerks and accountants and whatever the manpower resources that was required to run the government system of the British times. And since then, more or less, it has stayed that way. So this was the discussion that how temples were gurukulas, which were imparting both worldly education as well as spiritual education alongside. Because education was free, it was easy for the teachers to teach more things. Now with education being charged, all education and knowledge is rationed. People pay for these many hours of teaching or learning, and anything beyond that is not permitted. In fact, one of the teachers was telling that whenever she tried to teach anything more than the syllabus, other than the syllabus like shlokas or prayers, there were complaints against her in the school, so-called international school, that she is wasting children's time and parents' money by teaching them anything other than the subject. And that is how the education system got totally diluted. And with commercialization and commoditization of education, the real purpose and the spirit of education as Indian education disappeared. So Gurukulas used to maintain that because they would give children free education. Children would spend 3 to 4 hours a day with the Guru and learn basics of all kinds of knowledge. That disappeared. Then temples were also, very importantly, healthcare centers. There was Vaidya, every temple had a Vaidya and a midwife associated with the temple, which was sponsored by the temple itself, not by, they were not charging anybody. If anybody was sick, this doctor was available to that patient in the village. So almost every temple was kind of a healthcare center or a small hospital in its own might. And people were treated for free. Vaidyas never charged them anything because these temples were having enough and sufficient resources to look after the Gurukula, to look after the healthcare center, to look after the Annadanam and things like that. They had huge endowments of lands and other resources which were given by the kings in the spirit of the temple deity being the true king. The kings never considered themselves to be the king of the place. They always thought the deity of the temple was the true ruler. Even today, I've heard many people, many kingdoms, Travancore is there, so also in Odisha, Jagannath Puri is there. Even today, those who are coming from that lineage, they go clean the temple street and things like that. Even though he is a king of that place, still he does that. Because they thought themselves as the servants of the deity. Though they were rulers, they were actually servants of the deity. The real deity was Bhagavan in the temple. With that humility, they ruled the kingdoms and looked after everybody as children of the same God. That was the beauty of our temple tradition. But over a period of time, everything has declined, especially in early 1900s, once the temples were all kind of made into government setups or endowments. All that was now under the charge of the local government. And then not everybody can run the temple with a spiritual mindset. It's not an economic center where you get revenue from devotees in terms of donations and then you use it as you please. It was meant to promote the local welfare of people around the temple. So every temple had a role to play, which had to be recognized. But this was not possible for people who were not trained in this culture and system. This was the problem in most of the temples. So many temples around the country closed down. So many temples ran out of resources. So they stopped all these services like Gurukulams or Goshalas or agriculture or Annadanam. All these stopped in most of the temples. So much so that now the new model of temple management is charge a darshan ticket. So what is this solution? Problems are galore. We can go on and on and on discussing how terrible things are. But the only solution I told them is you educate the next generation about the importance of our culture, our traditions, our spirituality, our heritage, and our temples. Let them revive these temples. They are all from villages. All villages have a temple. In India, it is very common. If nothing is there, at least under a tree, there will be one statue which everybody would be worshipping. Even if there is not a statue, there will be a stone on which they'll make eyes, nose, ears, and worship that as the god of the temple. Every village has it. If you can just take care of that one temple is what she was asking me to tell the students. They don't have to do much. They don't have to travel to Kashi or Dwarka or Badrinath or Kedarnath if they can't. But they must go to the local temple and do something about it. If it is in bad shape, clean it, paint it, with the local support, rejuvenate it, and hopefully maintain it. And I have seen a lot of temples in South India, especially they are languishing because there's no priest, there's nobody who's taking care of the temple. Largely because devotees are not coming to the temple. Bhakti has gone down. Why devotees are not coming? Because what is there in it for them? We know Arti, Artarti, Jignasus are the only people that go to temple mostly. But out of that, Arti and Artartis are only majority. So when you are only going to temple to ask something in return, how are you going to look after the temple in other times when you have no need for it? Bhakti is not there. So again, reviving Bhakti tradition in our country, teaching them about spirituality, all this is important. And the only place it can be done is in schools because at homes, parents don't have time. Both the parents are working in most of the urban setup. I'm not saying about the rural. Parents are not there, grandparents are not there, nuclear families are there. So large part of the child's waking time is spent in the school, almost 7 to 8 hours with the teachers in the school. So if you have the right kind of teachers, right kind of schooling system and education which can impart these cultural and spiritual values, much can be done in transforming the country and in bringing back and rejuvenating the old culture of bhakti and making temples as the nerve centers, as the engines of spiritual growth in the community, also social welfare. So that is the only solution how we can revive and rejuvenate our culture and traditions. No amount of lecturing would help, and no amount of policy making would help unless people make it their priority. They take the responsibility of looking after it. So I was mentioning to them, this is also a temple like this. This is Anna Kshetra, this is Vidya Kshetra, this is Vaidya Kshetra, this is Adhyatmika Kshetra. All these needs are fulfilled first. And then people are also taught the spiritual values. That is why this is prospering. If every temple takes this as the duty and people participate and turn them into Anna Kshetras, Vidya Kshetras, Vaidya Kshetras, all temples will start growing and becoming prosperous. People will benefit, and all the evils in the society, including bad habits in villages. Most of the children come from villages. They know so difficult to change habits of people. But if once the positive vibrations of the temples spread in the village, more and more people will become spiritual, and all the social evils will start reducing. And the only solution I said is, see, we have children. Our country has at least 25 crore school-going children. Majority of them are from government schools, not from private setup, at least 75%. These are people in the villages, small towns, suburbs. These are the places where we must make an impact by going and teaching them this heritage, about this heritage, and making them responsible for the local temple and local whatever seva activities that must happen in those temples. That would be a good solution to solve this whole issue. No point in fighting with negative forces, because they are far superior and stronger at this point in time. It's like Vali, When you go in front of Vali, he takes away half of your powers. So already you are 50% less than what you were when you came. How will you fight the other person? So the modern way of doing things are like that. Because you want to eat it, taste it, your friend is eating, they are eating, everybody is eating. I also want to taste it. Then it becomes slowly a habit. Dhyayato vishayan punsa sangasteshu pajayate. Say, sangat sanjayate kamat krodho vijayate. Krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibramaha smriti bramshat buddhinasho buddhinashat pranashyati. Once in a while, as long as you have control over indriyas, that is what I was telling. Ganapati means the one who controls the ganas. What are ganas? Our indriyas are our ganas. This body itself is Kailasha. Ishvara resides in our heart. All the energy is Shakti, Parvati. Ganapati is the Dhi Devata, the Buddhi Devata, who intelligent, who mind, who controls all our senses. So these senses have to be controlled. For that sake, we need to worship certain deities. Ganapati gives us good buddhi. I hope you will get good buddhi, and next time you don't get tempted doing things which is bad for your health, bad for the society, bad for everybody. When you go home also, it's your utmost duty to maintain this discipline which you have learnt over here. Because once you go home, the atmosphere is different, the village has different culture, people eat all kinds of things and do all kinds of things. You should not go and get influenced by them. You should stay steady. I'm not telling you to go and lecture them about how good you are. If you do that, they'll become angry with you. They'll withdraw you from the school. Rather, you keep quiet. You say, this is my way. I like it this way. You eat what you like. I eat what I like. You wear what you like. I'll wear what I like. Why you have to force me? I'm not forcing you. You don't force me. That way, maintain your sanctity. All the good things that you have learned here, that has to be maintained. Otherwise, it is of no use. It's all empty talks. So for that sake, we need the support of our good intelligence, buddhi. And we have to pray to God, please help me to maintain this, what I have learnt over here. I don't want to give up. I don't want to compromise on my values, even under the influence of so many people doing things in another way, which may not be my way. But even if I'm alone and I'm doing the right thing, I am only right. Kauravas were 100. Pandavas were 5. Just because they were 5, were they wrong? Just because they were majority 100, they were right? No. There's no guarantee that majority is always right. So if you feel what you have learnt is right, you should uphold it at any cost. You should not give up. I always say values are those that you either live by them or die for them. There's no in between, no compromising on values. So you have learnt all these. I was telling them that we want to influence the whole education system around the country and teach the teachers of these schools how to train the next generation, train the next generation, especially in the impressionable age when they're young boys and girls, they understand things better. At that time, we have to teach them. But for that, I need thousands and thousands of teachers who are good teachers. We can train some of the teachers who are already in the schooling system, but I do not know how many of them are passionate about what we are saying. But some of you, and most of you, if you take to this path and you teach this through practice before preaching, I'm sure it will change the way the country is. And this country, if it changes, it will change the entire world. It will be the thought leader for the whole world. And I always keep talking about the new world order. It's not an economic order. It is not a socio-political order. It is a spiritual order that I always talk about, which is possible if most of you take to this path and spread this message to many more people. Now with this generation, what we call Gen Z, which most of you are from, they are very social media active, they are very connected to the world, and the next generation is going to be even more smart because of the information at their fingertip. At that point of time, you must present the right facts, right information in front of the generation so that they can choose correctly. You can't force them to choose. This generation won't accept that. You can only present all the facts, pros and cons, good and bad, positives and negatives, and leave it for them to decide. That's all we can do. But we should put a lot of positive facts emphatically so that there is a case for us to convince them. That will happen if you, by your own life, prove to them that if you live like this, eat like this, behave like this, you will be happy and healthy. Looking at you, they should get influenced. Oh yes, I've seen these children, they are different, they are very happy and healthy children. I've seen the other side of those goers to malls and markets and eateries, and I've seen how they have deteriorated. And between the two, I would rather choose these people because they seem to be happier. That kind of influence we must be able to create by our presence. Any effort, as I said, it is so huge a problem that we can't solve it in one day. But it will take time. However, if enough of us are working continuously on this, I'm sure one day this whole problem will be solved. With this idea, I was talking and discussing, and I thought I will share with you also. And she wanted me to specifically tell that you must mention it to children that wherever they are, if they have a local village temple or a place of worship, whatever it is, you can go and take care of that. You patronize it, you own it, you take responsibility for it. I'm not saying you do huge programs over there, but simple things you can start. Some prayers, cleanliness over there, some bit of awareness about our scriptures and culture, some bit of annadanam if it is possible. And that way you connect the community back to the temples and places of worship, which are the core, which are the soul of every village. So that would also be your extra homework when you go for holidays. And one more request is there from her, that if possible, record a local tradition or a cultural, some heritage of that village. Suppose they have a particular way of doing a puja, video record it, post it. Or if they have some particular folk dance or folk art form, capture that, store it, document it. Similarly, if they have any other thing that is unique about your village, about your surroundings, about your area, capture it and document it and post it on internet, because that is the fastest way and easiest way to keep it forever. So that is also a job that she was requesting me, and I said I will definitely go and tell all the students when I am going to talk to them. So these are two things. One, own up the local place of worship, temple, whatever it is. If it's a village mosque, temple, gurudwara, whatever you are associated with, go and look after it. Two, document one tradition or some cultural speciality or uniqueness of your area. You can video record it and post it on the internet, share with your friends. So that is another thing that you can do. You can do it as an assignment itself. Need not even do it as individual thing, but if everybody does this little assignment, I'll be very happy. And that way we will be able to connect to our heritage and connect more people to our heritage. That is your job.